Okay, so we are looking at micronutrients today. We finished our macros yesterday. We are going to finish up basically all of, we're going to get through the rest of all of our essential nutrients today. Whew, good Lord. Vitamins, minerals, and water today. So like I said, biggest PowerPoint in the program, almost 50% larger than last night's. So pretty substantial here, but it does move exceptionally fast.
I don't
So
see 4 yet on
what's
the
that?
canvas. Uh, um, excuse me, PowerPoint 4 because I like to follow along with you on my computer. I
Mm-hmm.
don't see PowerPoint 4 on Canvas.
Oh, on Canvas. Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Actually, if you do like to do that, that's because I don't usually publish them until
Afterwards.
yeah, I hide the old ones. I can start doing that
Oh,
every morning though. So I'm just
oh,
looking.
that's just that. I don't jump forward. I just like well, actually, because it's because I'm in the night classes, so you already publish it by the time I'm in
Yeah,
there anyway. So that makes sense. Okay,
there you go.
but
That's up.
thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. It's just the old video. I don't know. I usually do it like when I post the new video, but I'll start doing that every morning now, and then you can pick it up AM.
Okay,
Um,
cool.
It'll probably take. I'll probably forget frequently for the first week, and then it'll become habit.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah, thanks.
All right.
All right, I'm ready.
Yep. So let's look at vitamins, right? So what are vitamins? Well, these a lot of times they're going to act as like precursors for certain physiologic events. So for instance, like vitamin A has been shown to increase like eye health. Vitamin E has been shown to act as like an antioxidant and have really good properties to our skin. Vitamin K also acts as an antioxidant and has really positive properties for the way like potassium and blood clotting works inside of our body. Vitamin D is a precursor to our different hormones. And then we got all of our B vitamins, which are acting as like coenzymes for the Krebs cycle, as well as other physiologic processes. We got vitamin C, which is essentially immune function. So, these are basically necessary for helping out with most of the physiologic events in our body. Like I said, like vitamin D is a hormone, but it also like it helps us like we process it thanks to cholesterol, and then that vitamin D interacts with calcium, and then calcium is like what makes our bones, right? So, all of this is like very, very kind of linked together, which is why, you'll hear people say, they're like, I went and got a vitamin shot and I felt instantly better. And it's like, I don't know. maybe some of the B vitamins would boost your energy a little bit pretty quick. That does happen pretty quickly. But like a lot of this other stuff is sort of long-term positive physiologic content. So, it helps in different compounds inside the body when your body is assembling stuff. Obviously, it's going to help with improve your sports performance. And so when we look at like what a vitamin is chemically, right? Like again, kind of going back down to the chemistry, these are also organic compounds because they're going to be built on carbon. But they're made of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. So all the same ingredients that we saw in carbs, the same ingredients we saw in fats, and the same ingredients we saw in protein, except that protein's got a bit of extra nitrogen. Well, guess what? So do our vitamins. You're also going to have vitamin nitrogen in a lot of vitamins, and that's actually what gives them kind of their unique shape to allow them to, make these very interesting, chemical reactions and folds and things like that. So, the way that we quantify how much of a vitamin that we need, we go back to those DRIs, right? Those dietary reference intakes, right? And so the FDA has these recommendations here. And here's just a little bit of like a slightly better description than we saw the other day. But what an RDA is, right? That's your recommended dietary allowance. This is basically like, in general, if they're going to put out a recommendation, this is the number that we usually pay attention to. It's the average daily nutrient intake that's sufficient to meet the needs of nearly all of healthy individuals in a particular life stage, right? So when they say like, men need this much calcium, women need this much calcium, right? They're referring to the life stage or the particular gender or the particular age group or whatever, right? And then they're going to go, most folks around, somewhere between 97, 98% should get this much. And it's true, like that does cover like most particular individuals. Now, obviously, like if you are, like a bodybuilder, like Ronnie Coleman or something, some massive bodied person, those numbers may not apply to you. You're not exactly like an average built person, but most of the population, those RDAs are going to get us a long way. There is also the estimated average requirement, which is the average daily nutrient need that's needed to meet the needs of nearly half of a particular stage group or age or gender group or whatever. And the EAR is basically like if they can get a recommendation out there that meets the needs of at least 50% of people, they're good, right? So when they say like, you need this much water, right? Generally that's going to be like the average required like amount of water for folks. If you're sweating like crazy, obviously that doesn't apply to you. If you are sick, that obviously that doesn't apply to you. Special circumstances, that's not necessarily what we're referring to. There's also the adequate intake level, and this number is one that that is really, really important. It doesn't necessarily it doesn't apply to us all the time, like when we're looking at it, like adequate intake levels. But this one's actually really, really important when you look at like why a company would enrich their food, right? And it's like, what does the company have to do? Like, why would they enrich food or fortify food? Like, what's in it for them? Other than just boosting the nutrient content of their food, but that's not really their job a lot of time. Like new companies that are selling food, their job is to sell food. Like don't get me wrong, there's plenty of responsible ones out there, but like what's in it for those companies that are like enriching or fortifying cereals and stuff? And it's like, well, they're probably getting like tax breaks and boosts and things like that from the government. Why is the government doing that? Well, they know that like there are these kind of minimum adequate intake levels, so they're trying to like boost and get those numbers to those levels. That's sort of where a lot of these kind of came from. But your adequate is the recommended average intake based on approximations or estimates of a nutrient group that is adequate for healthy people. So basically, if they can't figure out what a good RDA is, they'll often use the adequate intake level. If they're like, well, we know that people need, let's say it's calcium, right? We know how much calcium people need, but we'll use it as an example. Somebody's like, they're like, we don't necessarily know exactly how much people should be getting every day, but we do know that like pretty much everybody needs this much bare minimum, And so that's the adequate intake level. Like if they can't really determine an RDA, they'll come up with the AI. And we'll see that number show up a couple times, with a couple of our minerals and stuff. There's also the tolerable upper intake level, which very rarely is something that we're actually going to interact or deal with, but it's the highest amount that's likely to pose no risk of adverse health effects. So if you actually go over this, right, as an increase goes above the UI, your potential risk for certain adverse health effects increases. So when we look at like fat soluble vitamins, like I mentioned, those are the ones that are, require dietary fat, they're dissolved in fat, they're carried by fat. We store fat in our body. And so it's pretty easy for our body to hold on to fat soluble vitamins and use them, but it keeps them in there for a long time. Water soluble vitamins, they're flowing around in water, and you are losing water and gaining water and losing water and gaining water constantly. It's constantly flushing in and out of our body. So, a lot of times it's funny, you'll see the tolerable upper intake levels for like fat soluble vitamins, and they'll be, relatively low. Then you'll look at the tolerable upper intake levels of like water soluble vitamins, and you're like, good God, that's a lot of, vitamin C, or good Lord, that's a lot of vitamin B4, and that's because like, for the most part, in terms of like vitamin and mineral toxicity, if it's going to happen, which again, it's very rare. I mean, how many people do you know are getting too many vitamins? It's very, very rare. But when it does happen, it's usually the fat soluble vitamins because they tend to kind of hold in our body. Water soluble ones, for the most part, you get too much of it, you pee them right out. This is part of the reason why, if you've ever taken a multivitamin, anybody in here, and then like you go to the bath, you ever notice how like when you go to the bathroom and you take a multivitamin, it looks like it's like the Hulk's urine is coming out, it's like bright yellow, it's like fluorescent, almost green colored, and that's basically a bunch of, that's all the extra like riboflavin in that vitamin being like, okay, well, we got what we need. The rest of this, we're just going to let pass right out of the body, So you'll see sometimes just some absolutely crazy numbers. If you look at like a multivitamin nutrition facts here, you'll see some of them. And I don't know what multivitamin this is in particular, but you'll see sometimes they'll go way over 100% because they can, you know. Yeah, look at that, 5,000% of the recommended amount of thiamine, right? Like, good Lord. But then, like, you'll notice, like, vitamin A, they're going up to about 100, and then they're really not messing with it. Vitamin C, 833%. I will say vitamin D, they're going up to 500. That's fat soluble. And vitamin E, actually, this whole thing is packed full of a lot of vitamins. It's got ALA in it, which is interesting. Huh, wonder what this is. Manufactured by Calabasas. SuzanneSummers.com. Interesting. What is this? I'm just curious. Okay. No idea what that is. Never seen it before. All right. So anyway, you'll see like sometimes they will pack crazy amounts of a vitamin or a mineral into certain levels. So that's just a quick review of the tolerable upper intake levels and RDAs and things like that. So let's take a look at our vitamins, right? How do we classify vitamins, right? Well, we're breaking them down into either water soluble or fat soluble form. Again, water soluble, they dissolve in water, they're transported with water. They transport around in our blood pretty freaking easily, right? Again, we get a lot of water in our body. We use that water for a lot of different things. And these are going to act as coenzymes when it comes to metabolism, right? So the idea here is that they aren't necessarily an enzyme all in of themselves, but they, in the ways that enzymes kick off chemical reactions and make chemical reactions more likely, coenzymes are going to make enzymes basically better at their job, right? They're almost like an enzyme for your enzyme, right? Hey, I heard you like enzymes, so I got you some enzymes to go with your enzymes. So they'll attach to an enzyme and they'll activate its ability to kind of kick off these catabolic reactions or anabolic reactions or whatever, right? And so when you think about it, right, like you look at like some of the enzymes that are involved in the Krebs cycle. When you look at these, I mean, these are some crazy named enzymes here, right? I mean, they got these, you know, oxaloacetic, nope, that's not right. Oxaloacetate, and you know, really long stuff. And so we need to be able to like have these enzymatic reactions kind of kick that all off. Well, B vitamins are going to make that easier to happen, right? They sort of attach themselves to enzymes and they make it much easier for all of that to occur. So when we think of those, when we think of like our water soluble vitamins, right? You can associate them with energy production, which is why you will see like vitamin water, you'll see you know, Gatorade and stuff, and it'll be like it's packed full of B vitamins and like it'll give you energy. And it's like it doesn't necessarily have any energy of its own, but yeah, I mean it does necessarily, you know, it does kind of make you better at the Krebs cycle and stuff. So those are your water soluble vitamins. And then we have our fat soluble vitamins. These are all kind of different than each other. They all do very different things, but they share a characteristic, which is that they are, you know, they require dietary fat for intestinal absorption, and they are transported through the bloodstream thanks to fat as well. So they actually dissolve and are transported thanks to fat, right? So, you know, we talked about how like our stomach acid you know, it's really good at breaking down like proteins and stuff. Not that great at breaking down fats. Pretty good at breaking down carbohydrates, right? But like for the most part, like fats kind of, yeah, they sit in that acid and it doesn't really do much to them until it gets to the bile, and then the bile really tends to break it down. Well, fat soluble vitamins, they're not really destroyed by that stuff either. It tends to survive pretty easily in our stomach acid for the most part. But then once it hits like a really good amount of like fat, if there's plenty of fat in the diet, it makes it really easy to get attached to that fat and get transported and carried across the membrane from our small intestine into our bloodstream. So, you know, this is where I've told my clients this in the past. Sometimes people will, and even there's actually, you know, I got a fun little video. I'll just pull that up. That'll be fun. It's like a little 3-minute video. ASAP science, fat and salads. Is that what the? I haven't watched this in a very long time. Oh no. Fat soluble vitamins. Let's try that. Well, that's not a science. You know what? I don't know if I'm gonna find it. Anyway, it's interesting because like you can actually get plenty of vitamins like in your diet, but you might not actually be absorbing them if you have like really low body fat levels or if you have a really low fat diet. Low fat diets have been shown to like result in vitamin deficiencies. Not always, but they can, right? So you got to make sure that like, you know, a lot of times like people will take like these, you know, salads with no dressing on them because they're trying to be healthy or lower the calories, or they'll get like a smoothie with, you know, and it's like, hey, like add a little bit of, you want that smoothie, like add some avocado, get some peanut butter in there, get even just like a little bit of olive oil, something like a little bit of fat that's going to make it easier for this, you know, giant jar that you just created that is packed full of vitamins and minerals. Like you want to get that, you know, from the jar into your stomach, into your small intestine, into your bloodstream. And that bloodstream part for certain vitamins is going to take fat, and for other ones, it's going to take water. So those are sort of what we're looking at. So looking at our water-soluble vitamins first, we've got thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, vitamin B6, vitamin B12, folate, biotin, pantothenic acid, choline, and vitamin C, aka vitamins B1 through 12 and vitamin C. Just a much easier way to memorize it. So your water-soluble vitamin, right? We've got our B1, riboflavin's B2, niacin's B3, B6 and B12, folate, which is kind of an interesting one that we'll talk about especially. Biotin, pantothenic acid, choline, which by the way, if you remember, another part of like feeling like you have energy, right? One other reason why B vitamins kind of give you energy. You might remember when we talked about muscular contractions, when we talked about the sliding filament model, right? A neuron is sending an electrochemical signal, right? The electricity that runs down the neuron causes it to release a chemical called acetylcholine. And that acetylcholine is what attaches to your muscle cells, and that's what kicks off your muscular contraction. So choline, which is a B vitamin, is actually one of the main ingredients in that acetylcholine. Acetylcholine. Man, I actually practiced this morning. I was like, I'm gonna knock the vitamins out in like 5 seconds and say them really fast. And now I can't say choline. Let's talk about where we get these from. So I'm going to move through this really quick. Do not feel like you have to have this part memorized, but what's great is when you guys go to take your fitness nutrition specialist certification, right? And you're sitting at home, it is an open book test. You're allowed to take it from your computer, you know, you may get a question that's like, what's a good source of thiamine, right? Having that memorized, I think, is kind of valuable brain space. But knowing how to look it up is using that valuable brain space to get a lot more done. So a lot of students will have this PowerPoint pulled up, and that way they can just kind of flip through it. Or a lot of people actually, you know, I've printed this for people a million times. If you guys ever do need it printed when we get back to the real world, basically we'll set it up like this, where you print, not full page, but like 6 slides per thing. And then you'll have like, you can see, it'll look something kind of like this. And it's a great cheat sheet, right? It's an instantly like, boom, B1, boom, B2, you know, and you can just flip through it. We've done that for lots and lots and lots of students, and it's very, very helpful. And where was I? Okay, so let's look at B1 here. So B1, essential and energy production. We're going to see that on all of our B vitamins. This is also really important for your nervous system. It allows you to catabolically split amino acid chains. So if we're going to be able to like process protein, we want to make sure we have plenty of thiamine in our diet. We will often see deficiency from like low calorie diets, or occasionally, like when you know, very rarely we'll see deficiencies in people who actually drink too much water. They'll experience what's called hyponatremia, which is basically drinking way too much water, and it actually pulls vitamins and mostly minerals out of your body. So what are some good sources? Whole grains, legumes, wheat germ, nuts, pork, and fortified food. So this is our first B vitamin. You can see right here, like whole grains are a pretty good source of thiamine. Legumes are a pretty good source, wheat germ. So we're looking at a lot of like dark whole grains as a really good example. But then we see like pork and certain fortified foods. Pork is just an excellent source of B vitamins, right? Don't get me wrong. It is also a tremendous, excellent source of saturated fat and cholesterol. So be cautious with this, but it is absolutely packed full of B vitamins. It's one of the best examples out there. Then we've got our riboflavin, more commonly known as B2, right? This is very important. It involved in the aerobic production of energy from carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So that's a big one, right? Deficiency can obviously lead to decreased performance. We're going to find good sources in dairy, again, breads, so dark whole grains. Cereal products will often have, they're often enriched or fortified with riboflavin. Mushrooms and eggs are a really good example. So I'm looking at, I don't know about you guys, but I'm looking at this. I'm like, okay, increases sports performance, dairy, bread, cereal products, mushrooms, and eggs. I'm like, all right, that makes sense to have like whole wheat toast with maybe like a mushroom and maybe goat cheese omelet, like throw a little like all that in there, get some spinach, some tomatoes. You get a great, super healthy breakfast, right? Great way to boost your morning. Legitimate. I've actually got a goat cheese omelet waiting for me downstairs after today's call. So then we've got our niacin. This is going to be your B3. I love that it's nicotinic and nicotinamide, which is impossible to say, but kind of actually not nicotine, but like chemically somewhat similar. Involved in energy production and mitochondrial metabolism. So again, we're looking at the Krebs cycle and the electron transport chain. You can see some people who are occasionally, you can find people who are occasionally like deficient in niacin. They will sometimes experience loss of appetite, which is interesting because that is actually coming from the way that niacin's interacting with our muscular system. And you would think, like, when you think muscular system, obviously you're going to jump straight to like skeletal muscle, right? The stuff muscle that's moving us around. But remember, your digestive system is smooth muscle and it moves stuff around as well. So in the same way that you kind of lose your appetite, or at least you don't notice how hungry you are sometimes while you're mid working out, until you like maybe your intensity comes down and you start like, once you kind of calm down, then you're like, okay, wow, holy crap, I didn't realize how hungry I am, right? And that's all that blood flow and activity returning to your digestive system. A deficiency in niacin can actually create that as well. We see skin rashes, mental confusion, muscle weakness, and lack of energy, all really bad things that we're trying to avoid. Good sources are actually refined flours, which is the only time, actually it's not the only time, you will see, like, I hate that this is on this list, but it's like, it's like a refined food, which means it's like a super processed food, which means that like, they stripped vitamins and minerals out of it. But yes, they often enrich foods. You will all the time see like niacin enriched foods. You'll see it in flour, especially. I mean, these are good. I want to find like a niacin enriched label. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah, you'll see it all the time in like stuff like this. You'll see like it'll add like riboflavin and folic acid and stuff like that. So you'll see like, nutritionally enriched blah blah blah. So those are good sources. But again, protein rich foods are just a great place to find niacin. Niacin is one that we are often a little worried about, right? Like niacin and leucine, both of these actually we're a little worried about with like certain like vegan diets. These are ones that we will often try to like boost through like supplementation. Vitamin B6, here's the big one, right? Everybody loves B6. This is going to help break down glycogen for energy, and it also allows gluconeogenesis to take place. Remember, that's the conversion of proteins into carbohydrates, right? And so when we're splitting that B6 up and allowing that, that when we're using B6, we are releasing glycogen from our liver and within our muscles. And, if we need energy, we can also get it from our protein, which is kind of an interesting one because that's like a double-edged sword. You're like, well, I kind of want to slow down converting protein for energy. And it's like, but again, the goal here is not to avoid one vitamin because of an effect that it has. The goal is to make sure you're getting an overall balanced diet. So don't try to avoid B6 because you're trying to maintain your muscle. Eat enough protein and then eat plenty of B6, So it can also aid in the synthesis of amino acids. So like we've talked about how like you can take essential amino acids and break them up and create non-essential amino acids. That's what makes them non-essential, is that your body can make them. Well, B6 allows that to happen. Um, let's see here. We form our neurotransmitters with B6. It helps us produce our white and red blood cells. So obviously a really important one here. And we'll see deficiencies associated with like low energy, nausea, impaired immune function, depression, fits, certain skin disorders, and even anemia, right? So where are you going to find B6? Well, luckily it is packed full into our protein-rich foods. Chicken's a really good source. Fish is a really good source, and beef and pork are also really, 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 really good sources. You will also find plenty of B6 in things like legumes, brown rices, whole grains that are rich in protein. Then we've got vitamin B12 here. It's more commonly referred to as B12, but cobalamin, which is very important for your nervous system's health. It's also very important for like energy and growth of tissues and things like this. This also helps you maintain your myelin sheath, which is basically this fatty protective tissue that surrounds your nerve cells and allows them to transmit signals effectively. So very, very important there. We talked about folate earlier. Well, this is going to help with folate. That's actually going to make it easier for us to use. And B12 has been associated with a decreased risk of certain types of heart diseases. So we want to make sure that we have plenty of B12 in our diet. Deficiency in this can actually lead to like neurological problems. But at the same time, overdoing it, if you go above the tolerable upper intake level, you'll sometimes get like a numbness or a tingling in the extremities as well. So, B12 is incredible, very, very important, but again, you can overdo it on certain vitamins and minerals. So again, animal products and fortified foods. So when you see like, B12 energy drink, you'll see stuff like this all the time. Where it's like, I don't know. V8's making an energy drink now. Good Lord. So you'll see stuff like this constantly, right? There'll be 12 shots or B6 shots, and it's got, look at this, 10,000% of the amount. That's actually probably not going to hurt you, even though it is a crazy high amount, because again, it is a water-soluble vitamin, so it's probably just going to pass through you uninterrupted.
Brad,
yeah, what's up?
Do you prefer the liquid or the capsules, B12?
I actually don't take B12 supplements generally. If I'm going to do it, I'd probably say you're better off doing like a liquid, just because like it is probably a little bit easier to absorb. Once it's broken down, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it totally doesn't matter. But if it does have to get past that initial like breakdown process, if it's in like pill form. And so, usually it happens. Like I'd say 99 out of 100 times it breaks down, no problem at all. But if it's already broken down into water, we know we know there's no chance of it not breaking down. So that'd be my guess if I had to pick one. Here's the thing though, supplementation, like you can see this right here. It's not really that beneficial if you're already healthy. Like if you're getting plenty of B12 in your diet, you get a healthy diet and you're fine. Like supplementing with it has not been shown to like do anything. And you'll see people say like they do. They're like, no, I took one of those energy shots and I feel great. And it's like, well, the mind is a pretty powerful tool, that doesn't necessarily make sense to me, My parents are totally these people that I'm talking about right now, by the way. My dad loves these energy shots. And I'm not too, I haven't really said too much to him. I don't really warn them because they're not really that dangerous. As long as you do them every day.
Right.
Kenny, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I was gonna say they are pretty addictive.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm addicted to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my advice, right, would be like save your cash and buy some better groceries that, get addicted to some healthy foods,
Yeah.
like find a way, like, find a way to boost your budget in something that's gonna be a better use of whole foods. So next one we got is folate. Folate's kind of a fun one. Folate is actually crucial for DNA synthesis and cell division, right? So this is actually like if you are like you look at like prenatal vitamins, right? When you look at like the types of vitamins that women will take during like pregnancy, we'll see crazy high levels of folate will often be mentioned in particular. Let's go here and take a look at the list, right? So we're gonna go down here. Where's my folate at? Folate, 1,330 micrograms, that's 222%. So about twice as much as you would need. So we're gonna find this a lot of times we're gonna see some other ones as well, but in this particular multivitamin, because folate is huge. I mean, there's no other time in human history where we are dividing and making more cells than when you are growing another human. So it's really important to make sure there's plenty of folate in there. But in all of us every single day, it also helps in the maturity of our red blood cells and repairing body tissue. So, folate is actually super necessary for, repairing the body. And there's some interesting research as to whether or not it has muscle building capabilities, because obviously that's like facilitating the repair of damage that we are creating during our workouts. And it has been shown to reduce the risk of heart disease. What are your really good sources here? Actually, this is one that you want to get from a lot of plant-based sources, which is why we do see a lot of deficiencies in a lot of cases, right? So plant-based sources, particularly your dark leafy greens, are going to be some of your best options. And then again, fortified grains and flours can have this, even if it isn't necessarily naturally occurring in like a lot of grains. Folate sources, we look at like some of these, you will see like fortified versions, but your best bets that are like natural are going to be things like spinach, right? That's a really good one. Parsley, avocado, I don't know. Collard greens, kale, stuff like that. Again, the darker and the leafier, the better, right? And then oranges are a really good example, which I also didn't know. And actually asparagus is a really good one. That's actually, that's the one I convinced my mom with, because that's the one she likes. So asparagus is huge too. So deficiency can lead to what we call neural tube defects. I put this down here on a note specifically because this seems to be like a question that for some reason actually pops up a lot. I don't know if it's just because like it's an interesting fact, and so NASM's like, that's one that people can remember, and so it's a snowball question or what. But remember this about folate. Deficiency will lead to neural tube defects, which means, basically birth defects, right? So it is important to make sure that you have necessary levels of folate during pregnancy. And it can, repair the development of your white blood cells. It can increase your risk of heart disease. Has a lot of negative effects when you have deficiency. But this one in particular, I've just seen this sentence in like 3 different versions of NASM tests. And I remember having this question on my nutrition test, actually, in particular. It's very rare that I actually still am able to remember questions, but that one always stands out to me. Biotin, which I think is B10 or B11, I don't know. Biotin, also necessary for DNA synthesis, right? So this is another one you will often see. This also facilitates gluconeogenesis, so again, energy production there. Depression, fatigue, nausea. We'll see certain types of like rashes and certain muscular types of pains in deficiencies here. So we want to make sure we have plenty of biotin. We're going to get this from legumes. Again, we're seeing a lot of like, I like that they got legumes mentioned a lot in here because again, it is like a good vegan source of protein, right? For those folks who are out there who are worried, it's like, man, like there are so many B vitamins present in like, beef and chicken and salmon and and fish and things like that. But it's like, if I'm on a vegan diet, I'm worried about getting enough B vitamins. Well, legumes are kind of, they're there to act as like the backup, right? So, kidney beans, black beans, pinto beans, lentils are fantastic. Lentils are such a great source. So there's a lot of benefits there. But biotin you're going to find in things like cheese, egg yolks, nuts, and then again, green leafy vegetables. We got pantothenic acid here, right? Also very important for energy, right? I told you guys, we're just going to see, whenever we're on the B vitamins, we're just going to see energy production, energy production, energy production, right? And so we see deficiency lead to fatigue. This is an interesting one. It leads to sleep disturbances. Actually, it's interesting because you'll be fatigued, you're exhausted, right? But you'll actually have a hard time sleeping. Pantothenic acid interacts with your brain during like recovery. So this is kind of a really important one. It can even lead to hypoglycemia because your body is basically trying to come up with the energy. So it's going to release more blood sugar all the time. And then you're going to burn through that, but you're going to burn through it inefficiently and you're not going to get as much energy out of that sugar. And so you're actually going to like end up, basically burning up all your fuel, but you didn't get very much energy for it. Now you have no sugar. So you're hypoglycemic. And you'll see that in people, and that can lead to, all kinds of bad things. And then again, good sources: beef, poultry, fish, grains, dairy products, legumes again. Pretty much anything is going to have pantothenic acid. This is an easy one to find. You'll even see like they'll add pantothenic acid to certain foods just because it makes them a little tangy. So that's actually not so bad, right? Then we've got choline, right, involved in the formation of our neurotransmitter. Remember, acetylcholine, right? That's allowing us to create muscular contraction. So that's absolutely hugely important. Symptoms of toxicity: you can actually have too much choline in your diet, and it can cause body odor, low blood pressure, diarrhea, and things like that. This is what happens when you actually get way too many of this particular vitamin. That body odor that I'm talking about usually will kind of smell almost like a little bit of a sulfury smell, is what you'll hear people describe it as. And this comes from people who are, again, getting way too much of like maybe like a high protein diet, where they're just doing nothing but pure protein, and so that causes like little problems here and there. Egg yolks are a good source. Nuts, milk, cauliflower, soybeans, and then we see liver actually is a really good source. And by the way, going back, liver is actually a really good source of every one of these vitamins. It's liver, but it is, packed full of B vitamins. And then our last vitamin here on the water soluble list is we've got vitamin C here. And this is the first one we're going to talk about, the fact that vitamin C can act as an antioxidant. So one of the coolest things that vitamins do inside of the body is that they act as antioxidants. So they protect your body against reactive molecules. And those reactive molecules are known, we call those free radicals, right? So I want to show you just really quickly. A little video here. Same results, huh? Okay. Oh, there we go. Oh boy, is that okay? Well, that's not quite what I'm looking for. God dang it! Where's the video? This is why I need to save things. You know what? We're gonna take a chance here, and we're gonna pick this one. It's short, and I like that animation there.
Hey guys.
Let's hope that this isn't too crazy. Let me know if you guys are having trouble hearing it.
Guys, welcome to the first video.
Ooh, that audio quality. All right. God dang it. All right. Well, I'm not quite able to find what I want. So, all right. So let's talk about like what a free radical is. No. God dang it, I wish I could find this video. So let's talk about like what a free radical is, right? So a free radical is basically like, let's talk about the idea that like, what we know about like atoms and chemistry, right? Without going too deep into atoms and chemistry. So we know that like atoms are really good at bonding together, right? And they're able to do that because they react with one another. And so when you look at like an atom, every element out there is going to have like these different number of protons, which is also going to give them like a different number of electrons. So they're going to look something kind of like this. So like here's helium, for instance, number 2 on the periodic table, right? And it's got 2 electrons because it has 2 protons, versus neon, which is a gas, right? We see like 2 electrons here, and we see a bunch of electrons out here, right? It's going to total up to 10 because that's number 10 on the periodic table. So here's the thing: the further you get away, right, and we see these different energy levels, right? We see like, here's an energy level, it's got space for 2 electrons. Here's the second energy level, it's got space for 8 electrons. You go further out, it's got more space. You go further out, it's got more space. And that's where you start getting into, like, I mean, when you look at the periodic table and you think about like what those radioactive chemicals are, right? These are what we talk about. We talk about like, something's radioactive, right? We're talking about like all this stuff up here that has like a crazy high amount of like protons, electrons. They're really far out. They got all these like different energy levels, right? And so that means that they are really likely to react with the world around them. Because here's the thing: these electrons here can share space in this outer energy shell. And that's how, these things might bind together, right? Certain things are really good at binding to others. Carbon, for instance, really good at binding to oxygen and hydrogen, all the stuff that makes human stuff, right? But here's the thing: every atom out there, everything that exists has this arrangement, and it is full of these electrons. And these electrons are constantly grabbing other electron, or grabbing, the energy level of another electron. They're binding together, they're sharing with each other, but then maybe one steals an electron, maybe one donates an electron. So they're constantly doing all that. And that's how we have like all these like different things in our universe, right? So you are made up of all these atoms, right? You're made up of a ton of them. You've got all these electrons, right, running around your body. That's how, that's even how we are generating our electric signals, right? We're basically moving electrons around to create those electric signals. Well, also, you've got all these things inside of your body, right? And certain reactions cause your body to lose those electrons. It can maybe be like a material, like if you go near like something that's radioactive, right? The reason it's radioactive is because basically it's just stealing electrons. It is just stripping, it's really hungry, and it's stripping electrons from everything around. So if you walk over there, you are going to lose all your electrons. When that happens, the cells inside of your body cannot act the way that they are supposed to. They cannot function the way that they're supposed to. And it might result in the DNA within your cells getting modified. Remember, your DNA is your blueprint, right? So now you've got this modified, messed up, somebody spilled coffee on the blueprint to the stuff that tells, your body how to make more you. So then that cell divides, right? But it's got messed up DNA. And so now you've got like a derpy cell that makes a copy of itself, and you've got 2 derpy cells. And then those divide, and you got 4 derpy cells. And then that divides again. Now you've got, and it all happened because like these free radicals are basically stripping electrons, and they modified your cells. And now you've got this mass of cells that are like kind of human, but like they don't really do anything, and they start to like take over certain types of tissues, and now those tissues can't function anymore. Starting to see what we're describing here, right? This is what we're talking about when we talk about like different types of cancers, right? Or at least different types of tumors. And so, here's the thing though: antioxidants prevent this free radical process from taking place, because what they do is they actually are certain vitamins that have extra electrons. And they have these extra electrons. And so when you eat them, they're kind of like a little shield for you. You've got all these extra electrons. And so now maybe some free radical gets into your body, and it's like, hey, I'm going to steal some electrons from something, and I'm going to get it from those tissues over there. But then vitamin C is like, you know what? I got extra electrons. You can take this instead. And it keeps your DNA from getting modified, right? If you want to see this, and you shouldn't, but if you want to see this process in real time, by the way, you can watch your body try to keep you from getting modified. If you just go spend a little bit too much time out in the sun and get a sunburn. What a sunburn is basically there is so much UV radiation from the sun hitting your skin that it actually started to modify your skin's DNA. And, your immune system like knows this, by the way. Your body knows what's happening here, right? And so your skin is actually sort of pre-programmed. The skin cells are programmed to self-destruct when they've become modified. I want you to picture every zombie movie you've ever watched. And it's that scene where the guy gets bit and he like looks at his loved ones. He's like, this is it. And he jumps off the building or something. Like, it's like, I don't want to infect anybody else. So I'm going to sacrifice myself, right? That's what your skin cells are doing when you get like a sunburn. The reason it turns bright red and the reason your skin starts to peel away if it's really bad, right, is because your skin cells are self-destructing because they know they can become cancerous if they don't. And if that doesn't make you feel bad for your skin cells and make you feel like you want to stop getting a sunburn, I don't know what will, because that's the saddest story ever. So anyway, that's an example of like what happens. That doesn't get to happen everywhere though. Your immune system there is there to take care of a lot of this, but it doesn't always work, right? And that's why it's very important for us to make sure that we have plenty of antioxidants in our diet, because it's going to protect us against free radical, oxidization is what we call it. We call that oxidative stress, actually. It's going to prevent that oxidative stress. So here's another description, right? Antioxidants protect the body from reactive molecules that are known as free radicals. And free radicals are reactive molecules that have unpaired electrons. These unpaired electrons will often strip electrons from their surrounding environment in order to fill their outermost shell. So they're trying to find a way to fill out their outer shell, and they're going to get those electrons from anywhere. Unfortunately, the thing surrounding it is you, right? So this process damages our cells in our body, which prevents them from being able to function properly, right? But antioxidants have extra electrons, and they're willing to donate them in order to act as a buffer for those free radicals to bond to and protect our body, right? So any questions on that? Because that's probably, honestly, the most important thing you should take away from talking about vitamins and minerals. Pretty good on that?
Yes.
Does everybody feel like they're going to avoid getting a sunburn from now on because they feel bad for their skin?
Self-sacrificing skin cells.
Right? Can you tell that like, can you tell that like I have like an Irish heritage background? The only way to motivate people is through depression. Never read Irish poetry. All right, so it also is very important. So vitamin C, it's great because it's an antioxidant. It also helps us create collagen, so it is very good for your skin, exceptionally good for your skin, actually. You want to have healthy skin, make sure you have a diet that's rich in vitamin C, because collagen is the protein found in all the connective tissues in your skin, but it's also it is in all like your tendons and ligaments as well. And it protects your body against iron deficiency, which is kind of cool because it allows your body to kind of hold on to that. It assists in the formation of hormones. Deficiency can lead to what is called scurvy. This is going to be a horrifying picture, but scurvy, which you've probably heard of if you've ever talked about pirates before. Pirates used to get scurvy all the time, and it is horrifying. But that is what you would see is you actually see a lot of times it results in like a lot of like teeth loss and stuff. It's a skin and like teeth disorder and gum disorder, which is why you look at so many Pirates of the Caribbean. That's why they were the way they are. So where are you going to get it from? Citrus fruits are great. Oranges, mangoes, tangerines, all those are awesome. Tomatoes are a really good source. Very acidic foods, right? They're really, really good sources. Potatoes are a good source, actually, particularly like the brighter colored potatoes. Kiwi, green peppers. Green, and actually it says green peppers up here, but like red bell peppers are an incredible source of vitamin C. And then leafy green vegetables. So luckily, there are a ton of vitamin C sources out there. And if you want to get them, it's also important for immune function. I think I said this the other day, Kenny, you were on the call, but this is like my go-to whenever I feel myself catching a cold. Number one, it's comfort food, so it makes me feel a little bit better. But one of the things that I will do whenever I'm catching a cold is I will order in Wingstop, and I will get the just crazy hot atomic wings because it is just packed full of like chili and peppers, and like the vitamin C content has got to be through the roof. For the record, there are way better sources of vitamin C, but this is like my favorite thing to do because the spiciness also just drains out my sinuses. But that's like that's totally a go-to for me. So those are our water-soluble vitamins. Everybody feeling good on those? All right, let's move into the fat-soluble ones. So fat-soluble vitamins, ADEK, vitamins A, D, E, and K. First one we're going to look at is vitamin A. Vitamin A is more commonly, sometimes you'll hear these referred to as retinoids, which is why you'll see sometimes if you look at like a vitamin nutrition label. Let's look at just we'll pull up a random one again here. No, it does say vitamin A. I'm not gonna spend all day looking for this, but a lot of times you'll see it listed instead of being listed as vitamin A, it'll say like it'll be listed as like retinol, or sometimes it'll be listed. You'll see like beta carotene, things like that, right? You'll see it listed under other names a lot of times. Nutrition companies love to freaking do that, which is actually kind of annoying. But we look at these what are retinoids? Well, they're compounds that have a structure really similar to vitamin A, so they're not necessarily directly vitamin A. But when you see retinol or retinoic acid, those things are there, and they act sort of similar to the way vitamin A acts within our body. So that's really important for eye health, actually. It helps repair injured tissues. And this is also how we make like mucus and mucous membranes, which are a really big part of, our health as well, So making sure that like you don't have like stomach acid issues, right? Remember, your mucus in your stomach is what keeps your stomach acid from dissolving and digesting your own body. So, vitamin A is pretty important, It also acts as an antioxidant. We're actually going to see pretty much all the fat-soluble vitamins act as antioxidants, but this is a big one, right? Deficiency can lead to blindness. It can also lead to hyperkeratosis, right? Which is actually the overproduction of keratin, right? And so you'll see like certain skin deficiencies and rashes and things like that. So here's how it actually acts within like the retina of our eyes, by the way, which is kind of cool. I like the picture, but we're not going to spend a ton of time looking at that. When we are looking at stuff like that, if we are looking at beta carotene and how it is going to react a lot of times, we'll look at what's called the retinol activity equivalent, which is basically like how much retinol is acting like vitamin A. And that's just a good way to think about it, rather than trying to worry about it. It's like, well, this, does retinol have a different level than vitamin A does? It's like, rather than like trying to classify it by itself, it's like, if you can get 1 RAE, it'll be equivalent to, enough of the vitamin A there. So don't worry, don't go crazy trying to like calculate that or anything. But that is also where we look at like what are called carotenoids or carotenoids, depending on how you want to say it. But carotenoids are our first phytochemical that we're talking about today. So these are phytochemicals that give color to plants and fruits, particularly carotenoids. What color are carrots? They're orange. So guess what? If it's an orange colored food, it has these carotenoids in it. And they, like I said, these are phytochemicals. I really should have given phytochemicals their own section here. But what a phytochemical is, I want to show you just really quickly. Phytochemical. Phytochemicals are kind of cool. They're not vitamins. They're not minerals. They're kind of their own thing. But when you look at them, they are the things that are giving foods their color. And so like when we look at like, things like this, like that bright yellow or the green or the blue or the oranges or the reds, right? These are all coming from different, and even whites actually, these are all coming from different phytochemicals. They're giving them bright colors. phytochemicals are really cool because, yeah, they give our fruits and vegetables colors, but they also act as antioxidants. So it's one more reason why you will not hear me say that, like, hey, you should go on a juicing diet. You know, juicing is really good for you. You get into smoothies, get into juicing, right? You're not going to hear me say that because I don't really, recommend doing any types of fad diets. But I will say this. They will often put a lot of cancer patients on a crazy amount of like juicing and smoothies because they are just a massive amount of antioxidants. There's just a lot of color coming into those meals, which has really, really positive effects. Again, the more antioxidants, the more you are sort of fighting that cancer, right? So fruits and vegetables with color. I love that sources right there. It's like anything with color in it. And it's true. It really, really is, right? We can see all kinds of different ones here. And, you can overdo it, right? Don't be wrong. We see like this one is like beta carotene, right? We just too much beta carotene. If you get too much beta carotene, guess what starts to happen? It's going to start turning you the color of a carrot. You can literally dye your skin these colors. If we see like too much lycopene, it'll result in sort of a flushed color. Actually, let's see. There we go. And it'll turn you sort of a reddish color, right? It can happen with any of them, actually, because that's what their job is. Their job is to, turn fruits and vegetables certain colors. So those are, carotenoids are a phytochemical. They're the orange of the phytochemicals. There's cyanins, which are the blue ones. I can't remember all the names of them, but those are all of your different phytochemicals. So try to get as many of those in your diet. This is another reason why, like, I tell people, try to make your meals as colorful as possible. The more often you are doing that, the more likely you are getting lots and lots of vitamins and minerals. We all need more color in our diet. So vitamin D, this one's also known as the sunshine vitamin. I love that. And the reason it's called the sunshine vitamin is you actually absorb it by getting sunlight. It's, they find that a lot of people, my friend Rebecca, who is a dietitian and knows more about this stuff than I forgot, she's forgotten more stuff than I know, and is a freaking expert on nutrition, recently found out she was vitamin D deficient. She lives in California, right? And she's a dietitian. So it's a really easy one to become deficient in. We live in a world where it is just super easy for us to spend time inside. And guess what, guys? Vitamin D has been linked to protection against freaking COVID. So even more reasons to get out there and get your sunlight in. So vitamin D is also going to help regulate calcium levels inside of our blood using what is called calcitrol, which is a specific form of vitamin D that regulates that calcium absorption. This is why you will see, like when you look at whole milk, right, you'll see it often listed as, instead of just saying whole milk, they will often slap a label on it that says vitamin D milk. And the reason why is because it just has high levels of, calcitrol, right? So is it vitamin D milk or is it whole milk? It's both. That's what whole milk is, right? Depends on who you're trying to sell it to. If you're in Whole Foods, you're probably attracting customers who like the word whole something, right? And if you're trying to attract somebody who, knows they need more vitamins and mineral, we're going to put vitamin D on it. So really important for your immune system, really important for muscle function. Muscle function, by the way, there's a big one. Remember, calcium is what actually attracts troponin and tropomyosin to create muscular contraction. So we absolutely need to have calcium in our diet. You're going to find this in a lot of natural forms. You're going to find it in a lot of fortified foods like milks and stuff. Sometimes they will add extras. They'll add it to a lot of orange juices. They'll add it to a lot of like milk alternatives. And this is one that can, when it comes to supplementation, be beneficial for athletes who, only train indoors, or some people who are not getting enough sunlight. This is where a lot of times you will often be recommended a vitamin D supplement. This is a rare example of, like, again, where my mom, I was like, you guys are in, the Northwest, like you're in Washington, there's no sun getting through. It's been raining for 3,600 years at this point. So, getting plenty of vitamin D in the diet is going to be huge there. And again, it's a hormone, right? It's important for like other hormone production. So definitely associated with different chronic autoimmune diseases, definitely deficiency can lead to bone growth issues. It can lead to osteoporosis, which is low bone density. On the opposite side of things, having too much vitamin D in your diet can lead to what we call hypercalcemia, which is basically calcium ions building up throughout the body. So we definitely don't want to do that, but I would be a lot less worried about getting too much vitamin D. So my recommendation, get out in the sun, go for a hike all the time. Then we got vitamin E. It is also an antioxidant. Like I said, most of the fat soluble vitamins are. This is going to protect your skin and connective tissue. This is why you'll often see like lotions and it'll say it's got vitamin E in it. It guards your cell membranes. It guards your genetic tissue, which is great. Good sources are like fortified cereals. A lot of times they'll add vitamin E into cereals. You'll see that fortified on there all the time, you know, Special K and things like that. But really good sources are like certain plants and animal products as well. Particularly, you're going to do really well with things like eggs. Certain milks are going to have it. And then plant sources, really, really good plant sources are your nuts. Nuts are absolutely packed full of vitamin E. Olives and things like that. So nut oils as well. Deficiencies, it can lead to the maldigestion of lipids. So again, like you might not actually absorb fat as effectively and vice versa, right? And then there is a risk of like breaking down cell membranes because your body's like, well, I got to get fat from somewhere, right? But too much of it can actually affect vitamin K, which we're about to come to. Vitamin E and vitamin K are, you know, they work together a lot. But vitamin E and vitamin K, you actually might be able to like, you know, K is important for blood clotting. And if you have like too much vitamin E, it can actually bind to vitamin K and then keep vitamin K from doing its clotting job. So looking at vitamin K, like I said, it is important for blood clotting. It also assists in the mineralization of bone. So again, we go back to vitamin D is assisting with the absorption of calcium, and vitamin K is assisting with the mineralization of that calcium. So both really important for your bone health. Too little of it can lead to hemorrhaging, which basically means that your blood doesn't clot. So if you cut yourself and you notice that you're just like, good God, stop bleeding, right? Could be a vitamin K deficiency. Good sources, dark leafy green vegetables. Again, this is going to be spinach, kale, broccoli, asparagus, things like that. Milk, eggs, certain cereals and fruits can also add that in there. And again, E, K, D, A, and vitamin C, plus all of those phytochemicals, which are the substances that, again, found in plants that give them their color, are going to protect against those free radicals. They are going to act as a buffer. They're antioxidants. They are anti-oxidation of your cells. They prevent that reactive oxidation. So you can kind of see here, here's a free radical. They're using vitamin E in this example, right? And what is going to happen is vitamin E has got these extra little electrons that is going to donate to those free radicals in order to stabilize them. And that is going to keep you from damaging your tissues, right? So vitamin, in this case, they switched the picture. Now they're using vitamin C as an example, but it's got this little extra electron. This free radical is like, hey, I need 2 electrons, right? I've only got 1. So it's going to get it from somewhere, right? So it's able to donate this, and now it's got 2. So now it's neutralized and stabilized and safe, and vitamin C is still able to pretty much function the way it's supposed to. So that is awesome, right? Here's the thing that kind of sucks. This is what's a real bummer, and I do not take this the wrong way. So do not misinterpret when I say this, but you have an increased production of free radicals during exercise. So actual physical activity has been shown to produce free radicals because you are through aerobic cellular respiration, right? And that aerobic cellular respiration results in a lot of oxidation. That oxidation could damage your cells. So It is related to the presence and use of oxygen by the mitochondria in order to make ATP, right? So that can sometimes create an imbalance between free radicals and the neutralization of those free radicals from antioxidants. I am not saying exercise will cause cancer, because actually exercise actually has the exact opposite effect of that. But what I am saying is prolonged extreme exercise where it's like lots of stress and you never stop that stress, but you're also having a very unhealthy diet, you know, that is very dangerous and very bad for you. And this is why we see that kind of stuff happen, you know, throughout human history. You look at like situations where people have been like overworked and underfed. There is a reason why it is so bad for you. It's not just the simple on top explanation of like, well, yeah, they're burning more calories and eventually they run out of like stuff to burn and, you know, the body stops functioning the way it's supposed to. It stops functioning on a cellular level. And we do see, again, certain types of cancers associated with that. Which is all one more reason why like your rest days are important. You know, taking time off and like, you know, going through a cycle when it comes to working out. We do not want prolonged intolerable stress under any circumstances. So your phytochemicals, right? There's a lot of different ones. You've got phenolic compounds, organosulfides, lycopene. Here's all the different types of them, right? Allium compounds, the ones that are like in garlic and onions. That's the stuff that makes you cry, by the way. Is these little allium compounds. Basically, when you break them, they get released into the air. It's also what gives garlic its flavor. You know, it doesn't have as much flavor unless you cut it. And then you've got your cyanins, which are like your blue and purple vegetable fruits. Carotenoids, those are your yellows and oranges. Catechins, these are kind of cool, actually. The ones in green tea. Green tea is packed full of antioxidants. So green tea is exceptionally, exceptionally good for you. Very, 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 very good stuff. Flavonoids, that's going to be found in pretty much any fruit and vegetable. Isoflavones found in soys. Lignans, which are found in flax and soybeans. So those are actually associated with healthy oils. Again, lycopenes found in things like tomatoes. And then phenolic compounds, which are pretty much in every berry that you can think of. All of those big, bright, colorful foods are packed full of vitamins and minerals, right? So, what is it? Eat colorfully. Is that no, I saw a picture that was really cool once. I just can't remember what to actually say. I probably just spelled colorful wrong. Images? Spelled it really wrong. Yeah, stuff like this. Just, these pictures are cheesy, but they are just perfect. You know, as cheesy as they are, it's great advice. Tips to increase that phytochemical intake, right? Try to get some green tea in with your meals. It's a great way to do it. Include like grapes, garlics into your meals are really good. There's a reason like garlic is so good for like your heart and also like has cancer fighting properties. Different types of tomato paste and spaghetti sauces are actually really healthy for you. Yeah, they're high in sodium, so be cautious with stuff like that. If you're going to do it, you know, you can make your own. Soy milks are going to have a little bit more than like dairy milks. Lots of fruits and vegetables at every meal. And then like dark whole grains, right? Bulgur, barley, oats, any whole grain food really. So that is our vitamins, right? Organic compounds, really important for certain chemical reactions inside the body. You've got your water-soluble ones, which is your B complex and vitamin C. You've got your fat-soluble vitamins, which are A, D, E, and K. And all of them are going to be packed full of antioxidants, which have been shown to reduce our risk for certain types of cancers. Vitamins A, C, E are all compounds that are highly associated with foods that have very high levels of phytochemicals, which are also going to act as antioxidants. And so we are going to encourage our clients as often as possible to get lots of those antioxidants into their diet. And that is vitamins. We are about a third of the way through, and that was the slowest part of this PowerPoint. So any questions, comments, or concerns? How you guys feeling? All right. Moving on. So let's take a look at minerals, right? Minerals. inorganic elements. So here we are, we're at the inorganic stuff, right? And when I say that, what I mean is that this stuff doesn't really bind to carbon all that well. So these are a lot of like metals and things like that you're going to find out there that we actually need inside of our body. Aluminum is not one of them, but iron sure is, right? And calcium is a metal, actually. So these are really, really important for like the proper functioning of our body. They, catalyze certain reactions. They give us structural components. We do know that like they're very important for all athletes, but particularly like female athletes who oftentimes we will find are iron deficient. It's really important to make sure we're getting plenty of that in. Also, a lot of the minerals, two of the minerals that we're going to talk a lot about are going to be your electrolytes, particularly sodium, potassium, and chlorine or chloride, right? All of these are really important in the production of electrochemical signals inside of our body. So go back to that action potential conversation that we had in PFT 105. This is how we are generating those electric signals, right? I got a bunch of sodium over here. I got a bunch of potassium over here. I flush them in opposite directions. Nature freaks out and wants to flush them back. And so the electrons moving around creates this big electrochemical burst. My body captures that electricity and uses it to do stuff, right? So that is why sodium and potassium are our electrolytes here. It creates an electrochemical gradient or charge, which is how our nervous system sends signals throughout the body. So like I said, they're inorganic. That means that they don't really have carbon atoms in their molecular structure. And so basically you just need to, you're like little, we're all like a little bit cyborg, we've all got just a little bit of metals like, stashed around our body that we're doing all kinds of cool stuff. We need, we don't have copper wiring, but we do have copper. So they don't have any calories in them. They are needed in very small amounts. You do not need a lot of this stuff. They, for the most part, they get into your body. They kind of stay in your body pretty easily. So they really remain pretty unaltered there. We're going to classify these in two different ways. You're going to have your major minerals and your trace minerals, right? Major minerals are any mineral that happens to be on the list that you need in greater than 100 milligrams per day. So we need to have more than 100 milligrams of calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, sodium, chloride, potassium, and sulfur. Luckily, these two you are literally going to get from table salt. So this is two that we end up having a little bit too much of oftentimes. Potassium is a big one, right? It's going to be found in bananas and broccolis and things like that. All of these are actually really important. And look at this one, sulfur, right? That thing that makes volcanoes smell really bad. Yeah, that stuff you need, and you need lots of it. That's a major mineral, right? Trace minerals are the ones that we need in less than 100 milligrams per day. Iron, zinc, chromium, fluoride, copper, manganese, iodine, selenium, and molybdenum, which is my favorite to say. All of those are really important as well. You're going to get a lot of these from like water, but you're also going to get them from obviously our food sources. So calcium, really important for bone health and also even blood clotting, nerve transmission. Remember, like we use calcium to create our muscular contractions. Calcium is what those regulatory proteins that keep your muscles from contracting are attracted to. So if you were going to create a muscular contraction, or if you ever like create a contraction, or you can't create a contraction, if you got like a muscle spasm on one side of a joint and you can't get it to like relax and contract the opposite direction, sometimes that can actually show that you have low blood calcium levels. If you ever go, and actually here's a fun story for you guys. None of you have heard this before. So here's a horrifying story that happened to me. So I was moving out of an apartment that actually is straight up got condemned and is now gone. Like that entire complex got torn down very shortly after I moved out of there. Yeah. But I was moving out of this place and I ordered some moving boxes from the internet and they were delivered to my house. They came from like, I don't know, somewhere else, Tennessee, we'll say. And I left them sitting outside for a couple of days until I was ready to like start packing. And I moved them into the house. And I woke up for my job after moving some of these boxes into my house. And it's like, 5 in the morning, I'm getting ready to drive to Malibu. There's this little tiny spider on my arm. little bitty one. And I was like, and I went on, did my morning routine, didn't think anything of it. Teach my morning class, totally fine. Come home, take a nap. I've got to get up for my evening shift at Sochi because that's when I used to work. I used to be just years ago, I started in the evening. And I wake up from my nap and I literally cannot walk. I'm in the worst pain I've ever been in my entire life. I've never experienced anything like it. The amount of pain that I'm feeling in my back is crazy. I'm having the worst spasm I've ever experienced. I cannot stand all the way up. But I had started at Sochi like 3 weeks earlier. And I was like, I got to go to work. Like, I'm not losing this job. And so I like hobbled down the stairs. I drove to work. I had to lean my chair all the way back, and I was in this position basically the entire way there because I couldn't like sit upright because it hurt too bad, which was crazy dangerous. Got to work. I'm teaching my evening class, and it's coming in waves. Like it gets, it'll be okay for a few minutes, and it just gets really bad. And I was like in the middle of lecturing. A new group of students had just started because that's where they usually start you in Sochi. And I'm standing there and I'm like, oh God. And I'm going down. And my legs start giving out on me. And I ended up just laying down on the floor. And I was like, can one of you go get the program director, Greg, please? And he like comes and is like, what is going on? And I was like, I'm having some type of spasm and I can't figure out what's going on with my muscular system, but it's really, really bad and I need to go to the ER. And so he drives me to the ER. I get to the hospital and I was like, hey, I was bit by a spider this morning. I'm like trying to run through my day. I was like, what happened to me? Like, why is this happening? And I was like, it's got to be the spider bites. There's no way it's not. And I was like, I did get bit by a spider this morning when I woke up. I'll never forget the doctor's reaction. He's like, anyway, and he just moves on, like does not care, because he's like, it'd be way more severe if it was a spider bite. And I was like, I guess. And he's like, also you'd have arm problems. And I was like, I guess that's true. And so they test my blood. One of the things they tested my blood for is they started looking at my blood calcium levels, and they were like, we think that you're going to have low blood calcium levels, and that's what's causing your cramping, and you've basically just got a muscle that is not letting go on one side and none of your other muscles can contract on the other. Testing my blood calcium levels, totally normal, not a problem at all. They had sodium potassium levels, totally normal. So I'm not having nerve transmission issues on a mineral level. I've got all the electrolytes I need to create electric signals. I've got all the calcium I need to create muscular contractions. They can't figure it out, so they just give me a bunch of morphine, the highest that is allowed in the state of California, actually. And then they gave me a bunch of painkillers and sent me home. And I wake up the next day. I slept on the floor of my girlfriend's apartment with my feet on the bed, actually, because that was this weird position that was somewhat comfortable. And I was like, I got to figure out what this is. I still think it's a nerve problem. I'm going to go to a physical therapist and I'm going to get some E-stim. And I'm going to have them only, and that's going to like turn some muscles off and turn some other muscles on. That'll work. This is like my crackpot theory. So I go to this physical therapist and this guy, he's getting ready to put the electrodes on my back. He peels my shirt up and he goes, whoa. And I was like, what? He's like, have you looked back here? To which I was very upset at that question because I was like, no. And he's like, you are covered in some type of bite. And none of the doctors had seen it because they tested my blood, but I had like 20 spider bites covering my back and I had been chewed up all day. And so I called the doctor back and I was like, hey, remember how we were sure it wasn't the spider thing, but we didn't check my body for any bites? And he was like, he was like, yeah, that could cause some damage. He's like, it's a neurotransmitter thing. He's like, the venom is basically keeping your nerves from being able to conduct properly. And so like, normally it paralyzes small, insects when they're eating, but for you, it's just causing a little bit of localized cramping. And I was like, what do we do, man? And he was like, well, without the spider, he's like, we have no idea for what type of antivenom, and it's not killing you, so we know it's not a black widow. So, you're just gonna have to wait it out. And I was like, but that is the worst pain I've ever been in my entire life.
That's wild.
Yep. So choline, that neurotransmitter that we talked about earlier, pretty freaking important to have in your diet, because if you don't, you will cramp up. Maybe not as bad as that, but trust me, it is not a pleasant experience. All right. So looking at calcium, right? Nerve transmission, muscular contraction, bone health, right? We definitely need our calcium. However, too much of it can lead to things like kidney stones, for instance, which can be dangerous. Deficiency, you can end up with hypocalcemia, which means you can end up with osteoporosis because you have inadequate calcium intake. You're going to have inadequate mineralization of bones. So what are some good sources? Green leafy vegetables are actually a really good source. Certain types of orange juices will often be fortified with calcium. Obviously, milk and dairy products and milk alternatives, by the way, they will often have a lot of calcium in soy and almond milks and things like that. You'll often find calcium in certain types of bread, certain types of cereals. All those are really good examples. We can kind of see here some good places. You'll even find it in like soybeans, but like I said, spinach, collard greens, things like that are fairly good examples. But again, we're just like milk. And then, actually top of the list is actually tofu, because they will often add a lot of calcium to it. Phosphorus is another really important one. Phosphorus, ATP, adenosine triphosphate, right? Pretty important to have in your diet. Critical for several functions, right? This also gives our bones rigidity. So when I say that your bones are made of calcium, what I actually mean is that your bones are made of calcium phosphate. And so we actually need to have phosphorus in our diet for that. Also, the phosphorus is on the outside of your cell membranes. So really, really important here. Deficiency can lead to bone problems, muscle weakness. Really good sources. A lot of times you're just going to find like fatty cuts of meat. So most of your fatty meats are really good examples. And then fish are packed full of phosphorus. So this is another reason why fish is so good for like skin health and stuff, is because like it does have like a lot of really, not only is it packed full of vitamin E and omega-3s and omega-6s and stuff, it is also packed full of phosphorus. So that's another really good one. And then lots of nuts. Very oily nuts are also really good examples. You're going to get a lot of phosphorus. Cheeses, again, liver is a good example. Yogurt, sunflower seeds, and sunflower butter is a really good one. Different types of milks here. Oysters, tofu. Actually don't have salmon up here, but trust me, salmon's a really good example. Magnesium, this is another one. Magnesium, very deficient. All my guys in the call, this is a big one. Magnesium is also really important for testosterone production. This is why you'll oftentimes see like a supplement that sometimes people will sell is called ZMA. ZMA is a little bit of zinc and a little bit of magnesium here. And they'll also have like, vitamin B in it. But basically, they think that this results in, better sleep and greater testosterone production. So this is a very common supplement sold to men. Does it? Maybe. If you're deficient, it could have positive effects. But again, I'd much rather get it from like a whole food. So maintaining bone strength, muscle function, testosterone production. So really, deficiency can result in muscle cramps, irritability, high blood pressure. Good sources include, again, meats, dairy products, and seafoods are a really great source. Your dark leafy vegetables, nuts, and beans. And then this is an interesting one, hard water. So actually drinking tap water is a good source of magnesium as long as you are not crazy filtering it. So that's kind of an interesting one. But a lot of times they'll add magnesium to certain types of cereals and things like that. So you'll also find really high levels there. My favorite source on the list, almonds. Almonds are just a great source of magnesium. And chia seeds, actually, where the chia seeds should be up there. They're super high in magnesium. Sodium, really important here, although we have officially hit the mineral that we tend to get a little bit too much of in the typical American diet, just because, not necessarily because a lot of people are adding salt to their meals, but because we just eat a lot of canned foods and a lot of processed foods. And it's very easy to get foods to last longer when you pack a bunch of sodium in there. But it is there to actually maintain your blood pressure. It's there to help with nerve impulses and muscular contractions, and it's an electrolyte. We need to have sodium in our diet. Deficiency can lead to cramping, nausea, vomiting, dizziness, and it can lead to low blood pressure. So our best source is going to be table salt. You're going to see it in soy sauces, different types of condiments. Ketchup is going to be packed full of sodium. Anything that's canned, anything that's processed, anything that's like from fast food, and then like smoked meats and like salted snacks and things like that are all really good sources. I would not worry about getting enough sodium. It kind of happens naturally for most people. But the more you are making like your food yourself, the more you are in control of your sodium, Talk to any good chef. They'll tell you, they're in charge of the salt. That's where all the flavor comes from. Chloride or chlorine. This is a huge one. It is a disinfectant. So this is actually really important for your immune system, not necessarily the immune system in your body, but more the immune system like outside of your body. So having hydrochloric acid. So let's say you make dinner and unfortunately there was some bacteria laying around on your counter and you accidentally, scoop that bacteria up, and now that bacteria is making its way inside of your body. Hopefully your stomach acid will kill it, and so hydrochloric acid, huge part of our immune system here. So deficiency can lead to an abnormal heart rhythm, decreased blood flow, and reduced oxygen. Where are you going to get it? Our best source is going to be sodium. So our salt, actually. So NaCl, which is sodium combined with chlorine, that is literally the chemical formula for table salt. If I look up NaCl, you will literally see sodium chloride or table salt, right? So you're getting plenty of chlorine from that. Do not worry about trying to boost levels, no matter what president tells you to drink chlorine. Or disinfectant or whatever. Idiot. Fruits and vegetables are also good sources here. We've got potassium. Everybody's thinking about bananas here, right? Very important for muscle contractions. This is why they'll say like, oh, you're probably potassium deficient. Nobody ever says you're sodium deficient. Could be. But yeah, no, they're right. It's probably potassium. Very important for nerve impulses, blood pressure, and things like that. Low levels of it can lead to muscle weakness and loss of appetite, actually. Good sources, potatoes, great source of potassium, actually. Spinach, really great source, and then obviously banana, but you're also going to find it in certain teas and coffee and stuff. So that's kind of nice. Baked potato, take a look. Where's banana? Banana is about 140 grams for like a 9-inch banana, but a single potato is 110 grams. So guess what? Bananas are good, but they're not the best. You're actually going to be a little bit better off with like potatoes and tomato juices and things like that. Apricots are really good. Baked beans, actually. Baked beans are actually full, and oftentimes they're like canned. They are actually packed full of potassium, which is kind of nice. But they're also packed full of sodium. So really good for nerve impulses. I don't know about overall health though. Also, they're usually packed full of sugar, so watch out for that. And then we got sulfur. This is a fun one, right? The stuff that's on matches to make them burn, right? Totally necessary here, right? That thing that you keep in the bathroom for rough days. You are going to get it from food, but generally you're going to get a lot of this from like actually your water. So again, like hard water, we actually don't have an RDA, an EAR, or an AI. We just know that it is very important to have inside of our body. Typically, you're going to get these from like your sulfides. So very important, reduce deficient of like protein synthesis when you are not getting enough of it. But luckily, you're going to get plenty of it from drinking water. There's plenty of sulfur in your water, especially if you were in Flint, Michigan, where there is actually way too much sulfur in the water. I'll show you a fun video in just a second, but you can actually get it from different juices, fruits, different breads and sausages. Sausages are packed full of sulfur. That's what gives them that tangy flavor. But alcohol is actually a very good source here, although it is not where you should be getting it from, obviously. Here's a fun video. Flint, Michigan, water, iron. Here's a fun.
Hi, I'm Rex.
Wait. Here's a fun
I
little
can
video.
often hold a standard kitchen match to my water, and like I said, it is unpredictable, but the methane randomly travels with the water,
And sulfur.
and sometimes it will light.
So that's kind of crazy, right?
Just like that.
Yeah, a little bit too much there, lady. A little bit too much, you know, sulfur in the water, and methane. Methane's actually the big one there. So maybe don't drink that. Or maybe just fix the water in Michigan, US. Come on, get it together. It's been years. My roommate, Chuck, is from Michigan, so it's like touchy subject in our house. All right, looking at our trace minerals here, right? You know, very important to get these in your diet as well. We got iron, really important for your hemoglobin and myoglobin, which are two minerals two proteins in the body that we talk about constantly, right? Carrying oxygen, we need iron in order to do that. This is why anemia leads people to have low energy and feel very nauseous a lot of times. So you can see here the way your blood cells are interacting with oxygen molecules, right? We need to make sure we have plenty of iron in our diet. Iron deficiency will often lead to anemia, and that anemia will lead to low energy, nausea, increased stress, lots of very, very, very dangerous stuff. So why does it happen? Well, usually it's like a low dietary intake. But for women, you know, we also got to remember that like due to like a menstrual cycle, you can actually end up like losing very substantial amounts of iron, which is why women tend to be more deficient than men are. But you will also lose it from like, you know, sweating and things like that. You'll lose iron out. So there is toxicity in high levels. For men, we got to be cautious about this because we don't lose iron very easily for the most part. It's fairly rare for men to be iron deficient. If you have too much of it, it can actually lead to certain types of cancers. It can lead to liver problems, and it can lead to what is called hemochromatosis, which is very concerning. You will notice when you are getting too much iron. This is gonna be real gross, but if you ever notice like blood in your stool, go to the doctor. You probably have too much iron in your blood. But that's basically your body being like, how do I get rid of this stuff? Get rid of some blood cells, you know? So good sources are going to be beef, poultry, fish. You're also going to, you know, liver is a really good source. You're going to see non-hemo, like soy products actually are fairly good. Again, legumes. We're noticing a lot of times like beans are a great way to like substitute in. Whenever we see like protein on a list that's like an animal source, if you are trying to avoid that, a great source is always going to be, you know, beans and stuff. So cereals will often be fortified, Rice Krispie in particular. They do put a lot of iron in it. Different types of bagels, lentils, spinach, you know, kidney beans, again, liver, organ meats are just a really good source of like minerals. Zinc is another one, really important for your immune system. So this one's huge, right? It enhances immune system. It's also really important for hormone production. So again, guys, testosterone, right? Please get enough zinc. It's important for brain function. You know, deficiency leads to low testosterone. It can lead to skin problems. This is a lot of times like, there's a lot of interesting research right now looking into like giving like teens more zinc. And like it's been shown to have positive effects on things like acne and just overall like maturity and growth and stuff. So good sources, usually dark meats. This is kind of an interesting one, but you'll find it more in darker meats. You'll find more zinc. That's kind of part of what's like maybe giving it its color. Fish are a good example, eggs, and again, legumes and stuff, right? But you can see here's some really good levels here. You know, yogurt's a really good one for zinc. Let's see here. Refried beans, actually a really good source of zinc. Chromium, this is kind of a fun one. I had a friend in high school who had a chromium deficiency. His body just, for some reason didn't hold on to it very well. So this can increase the effects of insulin, which is really nice. So making sure that you have sufficient chromium interacts very well with your insulin inside of your body. So if you're trying to increase your sensitivity, this is a good way to do that, and immune function here. Sources are mushrooms, prunes, nuts, garlic is another really good one, whole grains, wine, cheese, asparagus, and then our favorite one, dark chocolate. That's a great source of chromium. And then my favorite one, different types of beers. And this is where my friend Ross used to get to drink O'Doul's, which was a non-alcoholic beer. I'm not even sure if it's still around. But he would do it because he was chromium deficient and he thought it was really funny. Fluoride is another one. This is definitely mostly coming in your water. So mineralization of keeping your teeth healthy. Fluoride is a big one. This is what your dentist uses. They use fluoride when you go to the dentist. So deficiency can lead to dental cavities and a reduced bone integrity as well. Good sources, water, drink water. There's lots of fluoride in water. So, you're going to get it from different types of teas and stuff like that. Copper, this is a big one, right? This is also going to be found in dark chocolate again. So more reasons to eat chocolate. It also allows your body to more effectively use things like iron. This is also associated with like anemia and stuff. Organ meats and seafoods are really good examples of where to find copper. Nuts are really good places. And then again, certain types of cocoa products. Manganese, really important for your enzymes. So again, metabolism, right? Oh, and fat synthesis. So that's actually huge. We actually do want to have like fat production, not over fat production, but we need cell walls, right? So manganese is really important for that. You will often see deficiencies result in impaired fat and carbohydrate metabolism. So you'll often find that it's very difficult to burn calories. This will reduce your protein intake. So whole grains, legumes, tea is another really good one, and green leafy vegetables. So you can see here are some really good sources here. Pineapple, I didn't know that one actually, and I've done this lecture plenty of times. That's a good source. Manganese is huge. My favorite, blackberries. That's the one that I always remember. Love blackberries. Get Trader Joe's to start stocking dehydrated blackberries. Get that, I'm gonna be a happy guy. So I can start putting in my cereal. Iodine, here's a fun one. This is huge for your thyroid, which regulates all of your metabolism here. So if you do not have enough iodine in your diet, you might end up with what is called a goiter. This is pretty freaky looking. And goiters are basically like these growths on your thyroid. You will often see like big lumps, right? And that is a hypothyroid. That thyroid is trying really hard to produce enough thyroid stimulating hormone, or TSH, in order to like keep the rest of your metabolism running, but it can't. And so it just ends up growing in size because it's like, trying to produce, but it just isn't. So you will notice cold intolerance is associated with a decreased thyroid, weight gain, very commonly in like hypothyroidism, and decreased overall body temperature. You can get this from a lot of iodized salt, but one of your best sources is just any seafood. There's tons of iodine in the ocean, and so it's constantly being picked up by fish. So cod, super great source. Then we see some like milks and stuff. And then like we see like white bread actually a lot of times will be fortified with iodine because they are adding iodized salt to it. Same thing with like tortilla flours. So that iodized salt that you see, like the, that typically is in like the packets that you get at like fast food restaurants and stuff. It is a good source of iodine. Maybe not a overall healthy thing, but hey, it's where you find it a lot of times. Molybdenum, the last one's my favorite one, right? Really important cofactor when it comes to like creating enzymes, and right. But you'll notice this is the only one that gets like one slide here. Having not enough molybdenum actually has not really been shown to result in any deficiencies, which is kind of interesting, but it is considered essential. So that's really weird. This is my favorite one because it's such a weird mineral. It's like, hey, you need to get this. And it's like, well, what happens if I don't? We don't know. So that's kind of a fun one. You're gonna get this from a lot of cereals and a lot of organ meats. And then was it selenium's last one? Yeah, selenium's the last one. Selenium. This is, does anybody remember the movie Evolution with Orlando Jones and David Duchovny?
Yep.
Selenium is the active ingredient in Head and Shoulders. It will reduce your dandruff. But that's outside the body. So do we care? Not really. What's actually important is the production of different enzymes inside of your body. However, it is very rare to have selenium deficiency because you need very, very, very little of it. And it's found in pretty much any animal products. And in a Western diet here, like in the US, we just get a lot of animals with a lot of animal products in our food. So oysters, a lot of seafood here. And then it's found in like oatmeal and egg whites and things like that. So really not going to run out here. Now, here's some kind of fun ones that are not on our official list. But if we look at like arsenic, which is like a mineral that you will sometimes consume, arsenic will kill you in super high levels, by the way. But like, we are getting little bits of it every day in your water and stuff. Boron's another one, nickel, the stuff that's in nickels, silicon, the stuff that's in computer chips, vanadium, all of these are like little minerals that are like in our water, and they are found in like animal foods and products and stuff. But for the most part, they don't really cause too much problems because we're not getting a ton of it, right? So do you need any of these? Definitely not. Should you be worried about getting too much of them? Not really. I mean, it's pretty rare that we end up with too much of these. But yeah, like too much, there's arsenic in, or no, it's cyanide. Sorry, I was gonna say there's arsenic in apples, but there's cyanide in apples. Summarizing our minerals here, right? They are inorganic, but they are necessary mostly for things like hormones and metabolism, right? We've got our two classifications, major and trace. The thing you need to remember, major, more than 100 milligrams per day. Trace, less than 100 milligrams per day. We need calcium is one of the ones that we're going to pay attention to, the one that you're going to hear us talk about a lot, especially next month when we talk about youths. Calcium, iron, right? Calcium for nerve impulses and our skeletal system, iron for carrying oxygen throughout the blood, sodium and potassium, which are both acting as electrolytes and helping us maintain blood pressure as well as nerve impulses, chloride, which is important for our immune system, zinc, which is like a coenzyme for like a lot of enzymatic reactions. And yeah, those are the big ones, right? Generally calcium and iron, calcium, iron, sodium, and potassium, actually. Those are like the four big ones we spend our time talking about. All right, that's minerals. Questions? We're killing it, guys. We're on a roll. Water. Finally, we get to freaking talk about water. It's like literally the most important thing that you need to consume every day in the highest amounts. And yet until now, it's just like, make sure you get enough. It's like almost because it's so important. Like it's like oxygen, right? Like we don't spend that much time talking about why it's so important to breathe, but it is literally like the most important thing that you do every day, right? So water. 55 to 65% or 55 to 60% of your overall body weight, right? And we are going to divide this into two ways that we talk about it when it's inside of our body. We have our intracellular water. That's the water found within your cells. And then we have your extracellular water. That's the water outside of your cells. And we want to have a good balance here, right? So like your cytoplasm, that's the fluid, that's what we refer to as the fluid of your cells, right? The fluid itself is the cytosol, but like when it has stuff in it, which it always has stuff in it, is cytoplasm. So we just call it cytoplasm. So cytoplasm, the fluid inside of our cells, that's our intracellular water. Extracellular water is all the stuff outside. So when you are carrying a substance to a cell so they can drop it off, we need extracellular water to make that happen. So looking at this, right, it helps us wait. Oh, and then things that affect this, right? Protein and carbohydrate content, right? If you are like trying to carry protein from one place to another, we need to have water in order to do that. In order to like get carbohydrates from one place to another. This is why you can create, you can get cramping from like a lack of water. That's because number one, you might not be able to create like electrochemical signals because you're not getting sodium and potassium to the area. So cramping could be like a lack of those minerals, or it could be just the fact that you're not able to get stuff to move around. It's not able to transmit because there's no water. So when someone's cramping up, what do you say? Get some water, get a banana, right? Because we probably aren't worried about the sodium, but maybe get some sodium too. This is where we're looking at the concentration of those electrolytes, right? So we see this, right? We can see like temperature changes, right? Water is going to help with that. Whether, typically we associate like, you drink some water and you cool down, right? But guess what? It actually keeps you warm too, but in more of a long-term situation, right? By having enough blood, you're able to transport temperature, right? So we need enough water to do that. If you're super low blood volume, you're going to stay hot or you're going to stay cold. You're just going to be affected by whatever the ambient temperature is, right? So it does cool us down though, right? Chemical reactions all need to take place thanks to water. Your pH balance, right? Lack of water will make you extremely acidic. When you're extremely acidic, your cells aren't going to function very well. And certain bodily fluids, right? We need to be able to like get waste products out of the body. So all very big functions of water here. Inadequacy, screws up your body temperature, screws up your metabolism, right? Remember, metabolic water, this is the thing about like metabolism, right? Metabolic water is the water that's formed during aerobic metabolism. So remember how I said that like, you've got glucose, it goes through glycolysis, and you get some ATP and you get lactic acid. And then the lactic acid goes through the Krebs cycle and you get a little bit of ATP, you get a little bit of CO2, and then it goes through the electron transport chain. You get a little bit of more ATP, you get a little bit of CO2, but there is also a little bit of water as a byproduct here because there's some extra hydrogen and oxygen and they get added together. So we need to make sure that we have water in our diet to facilitate this metabolism, right? We need to make sure that like we don't end up with too much intracellular and too little extracellular and vice versa, right? So when your carbohydrates, fats, and proteins are broken down, it's going to result in water. We need to get that water to move around. So how do we lose water? Well, obviously urination. We also lose a lot of water like through defecation. So like make no mistake, you're losing water out of both ends, right? So, if you get like food poisoning, this is one of the reasons why when someone has like the flu or food poisoning, it's so important to drink water because you can become really dehydrated if you have like diarrhea. Sweating is a huge one. And then this one is huge. Talk to your clients about this because I've had people say, I don't sweat that much. I probably don't need much water. There is insensible perspiration. That is all the water that you are losing right now. You are sweating right now. Kenny, you said you're cold earlier. I don't care. You're sweating. Trust me. Right? All of us are. It's happening a little bit. We are constantly evaporating water and sweating just a little bit at all times, right? It is the loss of water as a result of seepage, which is the worst word, through tissues and eventually through evaporation, right? We are all losing a little bit of water all the time. This is another reason why we couldn't, that video we watched from Mark Rober, right? They couldn't test for urea in the pool, even if somebody doesn't think they're sweating, but they are sweating while they're under, especially, when they're swimming around like crazy. We got to be careful and watch for dehydration, right? So when we're looking at like a water balance, we're talking about either being in a positive or negative water balance, kind of similar to how we were talking about like a positive versus negative energy balance, right? That's calories in versus calories out. Well, your water balance is water in versus water out, right? A positive water balance, that's actually going to be where your water intake is greater than your water loss. If you're peeing excessively all the time, great, you're in a positive water balance. But if your water loss exceeds your water intake, your body will try to get that water back somehow, which is why your urine will be much more yellow. It will be low in volume. You won't be urinating that much. You'll also notice, we're going to get a little gross here, guys. If you ever go number 2 and you notice that it is like really difficult to get out of a body and it's like hard as a rock and it's doing that thing where it's coming out like pop, 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 like little clumps, that is a sign that you are dehydrated. Now I'm going to really gross you out. You know what that means? That means that your body was like, I need more water. And the only place I can get it is from the stool. So it will drink the water out. You want to avoid doing that? Drink enough water in your diet. Yeah, there you go. There's your gross fact for the day that I usually use to scare my clients into drinking more water. Again, I will either, I'll either get it through guilt or fear. But either way, I'm making my clients healthy. So inadequacy can be very, very dangerous. It can result in increased body temperature or decreased body temperature. It can cause like heat-related disorders like heat stroke. It can cause dehydration in your blood itself, which means that your blood's going to be thicker. And if your blood is thicker, your heart's going to have a really hard time pumping that blood throughout your body. So that is also not so awesome, right? So here's what we see in heat-related disorders, right? And all of these are bad, but first is heat cramps. Heat cramps suck, but at least they're not like medically that dangerous, but they are a warning sign. So if you get muscle cramping, stretch it out, try to do a little bit of like moderate activity. If you can actually walk it off, this is the only time you are ever going to hear me say walk it off. But this is actually an example. And then try to get as many fluids in the body as possible. Hydrate them as quick as you can. Now, if they start experiencing profuse sweating and they are starting to feel to the touch colder, it could be like 120 degrees to 110 degrees outside. I don't care how hot it is, but if you feel and you're like, you are cold, right? But they have like clammy skin. They're starting to feel like a little faint. They're starting to feel like, and their blood pressure starts dropping. That is a sign of heat exhaustion. They should not be doing any physical activity. Get them into the shade, try to lay them down and get fluid into their body as fast as possible. And lastly, if they are no longer sweating, so all of a sudden the sweating stops out of nowhere, but they're still very clearly, and all of a sudden their temperature spikes, right? So we went from like normal temperature to being very cold to running out of fluid, and now the temperature is spiking instantly, right? It's like overboiling a pot of water. Dry, super hot skin, they have a really hard time even coordinating their body, like they can barely walk. They start to be a little mentally confused. That is a sign of heat stroke. It is a very important that you get them to a doctor as quick as possible. Try to get them cooler, try to cool them down through fanning, cold towels, ice packs. Again, try to get as much water as possible, but call for medical help, get medical attention right away. If that ever happens. I've never been around this, thank God, but you will sometimes see it happen. So that is what we're talking about when we say like dehydration, right? If there's a negative water balance, it will result in dehydration, but hyper dehydration is exceptionally dangerous and then eventually can lead to heat stroke. There is also hyperhydration. This is a weird one, right? Too much water can actually be bad for us because it actually thins out your blood too much. And eventually you can end up with water intoxication, which sounds kind of like, oh, cool, I can get drunk by drinking water. That was like a rumor we all had in like middle school. Yeah, that's true, but it is extremely dangerous and it can kill you. So not awesome, right? So excessive intake of water. Again, this leads to what we call hyponatremia, which is basically sodium and other minerals being flushed out of the body because they are being carried by all that water, and it can be really, really dangerous. So watch out for too much water in your diet as well. So body weight loss, right? If you are losing some of your body weight from water, at first it's going to result in thirst, and then it's going to result in thirst and maybe a loss of appetite and an increased heart rate. Eventually it can lead to impatience, nausea, difficulty concentrating, increased body temperatures where somebody starts to get really hot, stumbling, dizziness, weakness, and then once they're having like indistinct speech and muscle spasms, they are on the verge of like serious permanent medical conditions. It can eventually lead to kidney failure and even death. And so that is what we're talking about when we talk about like dehydration. So how do you know how much water to drink? Here you go, guys. This is your urine chart. So in general, when you are peeing, you know, when you're European, we want to be somewhere in this range right here. Your urine should look like light colored lemonade, a little bit of yellow to it, but for the most part, you know, relatively clear. This is showing signs of dehydration. And if it starts to get a brown color, that is dangerously dehydrated. So be cautious with that. I've been here before. I'm sure maybe everybody on this call probably has. If you've ever done like a sports tournament or something, I did like an ultimate tournament out in like, was it Phoenix? I think it was somewhere in Arizona. And it was so freaking hot, and there was no way to get enough water. And I remember going peeing and being like, whoo, I'm in a bad spot. And I had to be like, I'm going to take the first half of this game off and rehydrate. So, you know, be cautious with stuff like that. So how do you make sure you're getting enough? Well, here's our general recommendations, guys. And these are numbers I want you guys to have memorized backwards, forwards, upside down. It is going to be 3.7 liters per day for men and 2.7 liters per day for women. That is about a gallon of water for men. It's just barely under. If you look at like, you know, gallon to liter, you know, 1 gallon, 3.78 liters. So pretty freaking close there. I recommend, like I said, getting one of these. This is a 32-ounce bottle of water. There are 128 ounces of water in a gallon. So drink this 4 times a day. That's a great way to make sure you're getting enough water. Isaiah, I've seen you chugging away at that water bottle all morning. It's great, you know. So that is basically what we are aiming for there. And we can see here's some different levels, you know, based on like your age and stuff. Obviously, like, you know, kids are going to need a little bit less because they weigh less. So there we go. And here's the thing that's nice, guys. You are actually going to get plenty of water content from vegetables, right? Like lettuce is mostly water, especially like iceberg lettuce, you know. I can't remember. I've seen like memes where people are like, I just got this salad from so-and-so. And it's like, here it is. That's like a bucket of water. Funny joke. So oranges, different fruits are really high in water content, potatoes, even chicken and beef and things like that. You start to get into cereals and grains and things like that, it's a little bit lower, but you are going to be getting water content from different types of foods, even butters, you know. There's actually, you know, a little bit of water trapped in there. Now, what about like if you're drinking coffee, does that count as water intake? So you'll hear people say no, because it dehydrates you. And they're not 100% wrong. There is a dehydration factor when it comes to things like caffeine and alcohol and stuff like that. But it does still have some water in it. So it's fair to say that you are getting water from caffeine, but sometimes that caffeine can dehydrate you extracellularly. So basically, because there are so many particles of other stuff floating around in that water, it might be stripping some of the water out of your cells to kind of balance everything out. So it can sometimes lead to, you know, what we call dehydration, even though in the long run, you know, you are getting some of that water. But, you know, 8 ounces of coffee is not equivalent to 8 ounces of water. You know, I usually tell my clients to like have it, basically. High protein diets can lead to dehydration. Certain medications can lead to dehydration. So make sure you are adjusting your fluid intake accordingly. If you're on a medication, you know, obviously that's going to be a conversation with your doctor more than it is your trainer, you know. For athletes who are performing physical activity, you want to make sure that you are getting enough hydration, that you're basically peeing every 1 to 2 hours. You should be peeing a lot if you're an athlete, you know. And again, it should be pale or relatively clear in color. Again, light lemonade is what I tell people. But again, you can get fluid from, you're going to find it in obviously water. You can get it in milk, juices, teas, coffees, sports beverages, and even like watery foods and stuff. That does count towards your water content. Again, though, just make sure if it's coffee and tea and stuff, you're aware of the fact that like it should be consumed in moderation, because it is have a somewhat early dehydration effect before it's sort of been processed out. Again, high protein diets. That protein is going to require gluconeogenesis to be converted into carbohydrate. So if that happens, it can cause dehydration. So that's why dehydration is associated with super high protein diets. Be careful with that. So in general, what we're going to say for our athletes pre-exercise is to avoid is to make sure we do not avoid, I was like, that's not right. That's the opposite. We want to make sure we're getting plenty of water, because if you do not get enough water, it can result in fatigue, dizziness, rise in temperature, increased heart rate, and increased exertion level, because guess what? Everything's going to be harder. So in general, they'll say 400 to 600 milliliters. That's about 13 to 20 ounces. It's about half one of these. About 4 hours prior to exercise. I honestly, before every game of Ultimate that I play nowadays, I just try to kill one of these as fast as I can when I wake up first thing in the morning. And then about 2 hours prior, get another like 8 to 10 ounces. And then, about 10 ounces prior. Don't go crazy. You don't want to be like waterlogged running in, going into like a high intensity sport. But, anywhere from 10 to 20 ounces, I'm sorry, anything from 8 to 10 ounces is going to be really helpful there. And if you're doing like juices and stuff, like orange juice, it's actually great. Like it's full of water, and guess what? It's full of sugar. So boost your energy production. Sports drinks. That's another one, I like coconut water. That's one of my favorites. So in general, there are different like water schedules depending on like who your athlete is. But the idea here is to include this, throughout your day. You don't want to try to like just be like, all right, well, I'm going to drink a gallon of water first thing in the morning and then, forget about it for the rest of the day. That's not going to help you. If anything, that's just going to probably lead to nausea, actually. So try to keep your blood plasma levels, try to keep your heart rhythm normal, but it should be based on like your body size, what type of activity that is you're doing. Low intensity, it's about 2 to 3 liters of water per hour. High intensity, maybe it's going to be higher than that, right? So short duration exercise, get some electrolytes in there. Longer duration, definitely get some electrolytes in there. So that's one thing that we are aware of. Because you are going to need to drink more water to keep your temperature normal, you may lose some of those sodium minerals in that water, which means you're going to need an even higher sodium intake. Andres, we were talking about hot 8 yoga yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Love hot yoga. It is fantastic, but it means you need to drink way more water. And by drinking way more water, you will sometimes lose that sodium. So it's really important when you are doing like that type of exercise to refill that sodium, boost your sodium levels.
That's right.
And magnesium and potassium for that matter. So, that's where sometimes they even sell it. They'll even have it at like yoga studios. Sometimes they'll have like this, mineral powder that you put in your drinks. Which is basically salt water. So I'm like, no, keep that away from me. Gross. I'll put it on my lunch. So how do you determine how much water you need? Well, if you lose body weight, this is one of the things that you can do. You can weigh an athlete before and weigh them after, and then drink the equivalent fluid in ounces based on the total weight lost during exercise. So that's going to be about 6 to 8 ounces for every pound lost. Temperature, fluid replacement. Yeah, we already talked about that. Including like your macronutrients, vitamins, and minerals with your fluid can be nice. This is where, protein shakes come back, right? If you're an athlete who has to eat a lot of calories and drink a lot of water, it can be hard sometimes. I run into this problem all the time where I'm like, how much freaking rice do I need to eat? That's a huge bowl of rice, like that's so many grams of carbs. And sometimes it can be exhausting. So, a protein shake that has carbohydrates in it, that has lots of water in it as well, could be a really great way to get your macros, vitamins, minerals. This is where juicing is kind of handy, actually. So which ones are you going to focus on? if it's the middle of exercise, probably glucose and sucrose, which sucrose is bad. That's the table sugar that spikes your blood sugar levels like crazy. But during activity, that's great for boosts in energy, right? Here's the recommended amount according to NASM. It's about 60 to 66 grams per hour if you're trying to maintain the power output. So that's where you'll see like when you look at like shot blocks, Cliff Bar sells these. My buddy Patrick literally was talking about this on Sunday because he brought some on our run when we went. And he was like, where's the recommended? They have like how much you're supposed to take. When should I eat? Half a packet 15 minutes before activity, followed by 1 to 2 packets per hour. Which is a lot. You think about like that's a whole freaking one of these, 1 to 2 of those per hour. Let's look at how many grams of carbs that is. You'll notice it'll, the serving size is 3 pieces. There's 2 servings per. So a full packet would be about 24 grams. It would be about 48 grams of carbohydrates, which is just barely below what we're seeing here. So actually makes sense, 1 to 2 per hour. All right, so when we're looking at our fluid replacements, right, we want to be aware that like electrolytes can be found in those, right? Sodium, chlorine, potassium, magnesium, and calcium. A lot of times those are going to be found in sports drinks, right? Gatorades and things like that. When we're looking at that, they're a great source of energy because they are like full of glucose. The things you want to consider, you do want to consider the flavor. Make sure your athlete likes them. Consider the exercise intensity. So, 8% of low or lower if it's like high intensity, because, going a little bit means that there's just going to be basically too much sugar in that water and not enough water in that water. And then generally 0.3 to 0.7 grams of sodium per liter consumed. And that's going to be a fairly good taste. You don't have to consider this, guys, but if you've ever wanted to know exactly like why Gatorade is exactly the way it is, this is it right here. And then typically somewhere between 50 and 59 degrees, which is what you will actually see in, that is how specific they get. Oh, you can look at a pro sports team. That's why they got little tiny refrigerators on the field, right? Kind of fun, actually, So guidelines for consuming your fluids, right? Begin your fluid intake early. Don't try to catch up because you got dehydrated first. And then always make sure that, if you're using if your event is greater than 60 to 90 minutes, a sports beverage like Gatorade or something, or Powerade or whatever, that can be pretty helpful. Post-exercise, make sure you get plenty of water in. Generally this is going to be in the form of just straight up water. We really do just like water for this. But again, sports drinks, maybe that can help with your glycogen levels and electrolyte balances. Me personally, I'm all about regular water or juice afterwards, because that's a great way. Again, I like coconut water. Coconut water is like one of my favorites. So here is, again, that hydration schedule. Like I said earlier, 13 to 20 ounces, 2 to 4, and then 10 minutes, 7 to 10 ounces there. I think it was 7 to 8 earlier. And then we like water. During events, we like sports drinks. We do. They have been shown to be effective. After exercise, 16 to 24 ounces for every pound lost during your activity. And make no mistake, professional athletes, they will weigh themselves before and after. Like, that is a real thing, depending on how seriously they're taking it. So things you need to consider when you're choosing your fluids, the level of satisfaction. Does it taste good? Do you want the blue or the red flavor? The amount of carbohydrates present, the price, that's a big one. And then are there any like actual other supplemental facts there? So lastly, thing I want to mention here, because I don't think it's about to be summarized up, but caffeine, it is a flowing agent, so it can result in dehydration because it does cause your body to lose that water, but it does have water in it. So I always tell people it's about just, if you're drinking 8 ounces of coffee, assume that you're getting 4 ounces of water. Alcohol, that will also cause a negative water balance because your body has to process all that alcohol. And then high protein diets, gluconeogenesis steals your water. So it requires hydrolysis, which can result in dehydration. So water, really, really important because it gives structure to our cells. It removes our waste products. It aids in our body temperature. We are losing it constantly through our urine, feces, sweat, and insensible sweat. So do not forget, even if you're like, no, it's been cold all day, trust me, you're losing water. Water intoxication can be really dangerous, so make sure that you are not losing your sodium levels there. That can actually cause cramping as well, which means you need to get more sodium back in your diet. But appropriate hydration, always really important. It will always boost your performance. Try to get 3 cups of water for every pound lost during exercise. And that is the largest PowerPoint that you will experience probably ever.
We finished in good time.
Not bad, right? It does move quick. A lot of this, the way I always describe this, because sometimes people are like, well, we just went through it so quickly. And it's like, yeah, but have you ever, when you're learning a new board game and you just read all the rules once, and then you're like, do you get it? And it's like, not really, but I'm sure I will once we start playing.
Yeah.
That's what we did today. Trust me, you're going to notice, like when you're reading, you'll get a test question and you'll be like, ah ha ha. And then you're going to go through your notes and be like, boom, I remember that. Right. So that's really the main goal here. There's an argument to be made that that's what all school is like, basically. Do you guys have any questions today? Is there anything like anything I said that was weird, or anything you're like, I don't know, that doesn't make any sense? Feeling good, fellas?
Yep.
All right, recording is dead. I'll see y'all tomorrow.